Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of AI After Hours. I'm your host, Katie Shive, and today we're going to get into a topic and a story that I think is going to strike a nerve, especially if you have been in the housing industry for at least 5 years. So I want you to think back to 2020. Now, I know we all have our own 2020 stories, but if you are in mortgage specifically, you'll remember very vividly, we were in a massive refi boom. And that is because rates dropped somewhat overnight, at least it felt. And all of a sudden, if you had any database or book of business, you had more business than you could touch. You know what I'm talking about? Some of you might be having a little PSDT or PSD, whatever, post traumatic stress listening to this, PTSD. But what happened is overnight rates shifted and anybody that had a database, like I said, had more business than they could handle. Their phones were ringing off the hook, and everybody in America that was a homeowner was instantly trying to cash in on the low rates. Not to mention, it was super nutty because we had COVID restrictions. So, for many states, you couldn't go in person. People were navigating Zoom and electronic dot collection, and just the insanity didn't seem to stop for an extended period of time. Now, the loan officers that fared well during that were very different than the ones that pretty much got buried by it. Here's what I mean by that is systems save your bacon. Now, the loan officers that I watched, and I had a front row seat to a very large team at the time, and the ones that were crushing it, they had systems. And they didn't have systems in place after the refi boom hit. They had their solid systems in place before. Some were able to catch up fast enough and build some systems in process, but it certainly made it a little bit hairy for them as well. So the teams that did well, they knew the lanes that they were in. They knew what they were really good at. They had their processes dialed, their scripts dialed. Like they were just good at what they did. And why that mattered is because when the volume cranked, all of the sudden, their systems flexed and allowed them to have the capacity to support it. Where the loan officers that were just reactionary and trial by fire, they paid heavy for it. Long days, stressed, couldn't keep ahead of their files. Their files were falling apart. Ops was falling apart. It was really just a perfect storm for a really bad client experience. Now, here's why I'm sharing that story and what I'm seeing happen today. AI feels very much like part two of this story. It is the new boom that is literally hitting every aspect of every facet of business. And I'm watching it front row in the mortgage space and in real estate. And people are like, calling me, DMing me, like I'm having a lot of conversations and there's a lot of anxiety around AI. And what I'm finding is the loan officers and the professionals that have solid marketing foundations in place, they're faring really well. They know that AI isn't going to replace them, but they have to be fully embracing AI. Here's the thing, they're approaching AI systematically the same way they approach their business. They understand that for their content, for adoption of the tools that they're using, they need to build a system in place. All right, so now let's break this down because it sounds really nice in theory to have a system, but what does that exactly mean? And especially what does that mean when it comes to AI? For me, when I talk about content, it means having your foundation laid first. I notice a lot of people when it comes to content is they just spray and pray and see what sticks. Now, creating content can sometimes be the fun part because you're getting creative and you're telling stories, and that's fine. But a lot of times when you unpack that, behind the scenes, there's no foundation. They're not super clear on who they're talking to. They're not super clear on what their value proposition is or their message is. And they're not really consistent on the platforms and the strategy that they're wanting to deliver. So their messaging and everything that they're doing feels a little bit like knee jerk reaction. Now, when you put together a foundation, what I mean by that is getting really clear on your core. Who are you? Who do you serve? How do you help in a unique way that is different from other people in your audience, right? So it's getting clear on those things. What is your voice? And when I say, who do you help? Let's not forget it's all about the client. In the home buying journey, you're not the hero, you're the guide. So when we think about creating content, we want our content to be so crystal clear on who are the personas, like who are the people that are on the other side of the screen scrolling or listening to what you're talking about. And what is keeping them up at night? What are their biggest fears? What are their pain points? What are their needs? What gaps do they currently have? What misperceptions do they have? What do they think about down payment assistance, or is now a good time to buy, or am I priced out of my market, or right? So we want to be clear on your story and those foundational pieces, but like it gets really good when you start understanding your audience and really what is driving them and what they need. And now you're creating content really tailored to them. And you weave in your story and your value proposition and your team and what makes you different and how you talk, like your voice sounding different than just the AI slop that we see everywhere. That's when your content gets really good. Okay, so that is step one to the system is you really need to do the legwork first to build out your foundation. Now, the second part of your system is you need to put together a strategy for your content, right? So not just the rates dropped or rates skyrocketed and let me just do a one-off post about it, but like a weekly content rhythm. So I always like to encourage my clients to look at your current bandwidth. Everybody has a different capacity for margin in what they can do. And some people are outsourcing, some people are doing it all themselves. So that is going to vary also. But based on your specific needs and what you're doing today, what strategy do you want to be using? Do you want to be wide? Do you want to be narrow and deep? Do you want to just maybe be on LinkedIn and Instagram? Maybe you want to have a podcast or you want to do YouTube video, or you're really good with long form writing and you want to do like a Substack or LinkedIn email combo. Maybe you want to be ambitious and do all of it. Again, what type of content do you want to create? What platforms do you want to be on? And how much time each week do you have realistically to create that content so that you can be consistent? So that's step two. And then step three is the fun part. That's actually creating the content every single week. Now, once you have your foundations in place, once you have your strategy, both of those tools can be used in tandem to also help create the content that you're writing on AI and absolutely should be helping you. So, what I like to do is load up your brand book. That's what I call the foundation. Load up your content strategy, and then start creating the content on a weekly rhythm. Now, I'm a big fan of coming up with one anchor piece of content. Think of it as one idea, and then how do you parse out that idea into different types of content. So, for example, this exact conversation that I'm sharing with you right now literally came from last week. I was in the car. It was my kids' spring break, so I had no spare time. And I just had an idea pop in my head. And I was like, the noise right now with AI is so overwhelming. This really reminds me of 2020 when nobody could keep pace with refis. And I was like, oh, ding, ding, there's a link. Let me connect the dots here. And so I just I opened Claude. I have Whisperflow, which if you don't know what Whisperflow is, I'll link it in the show notes, but it's a really great voice to text tool. And I literally just brain dumped exactly what I just shared with you. voice to text into Claude. And then I said, hey, can you help me come up with a content theme for the week? Because I feel like this will land with my audience. Claude brilliantly organized those thoughts. And then I said, okay, great. Now I want to create a podcast. And I went down my list of the content rhythm that I do every single week based off of a single idea. And you guys, I'm not joking you when I say I was pushing my kids on a swing at the park when my content, my full, all 7 assets were built in 90 seconds. And of course, yes, I still need to go through. I'm still going to scrub each piece. I'm still going to make sure that my fingerprints are on every piece of content before I post it. But just because AI powered it doesn't mean it lacked my thought or my voice or my originality. I came to that strategy session with the idea that I voice dumped. And then because I had my AI account set up with my foundation, my voice, my audience personas, everything really clearly organized, and I have my strategy cadence of here's what I want to do on a weekly rhythm, that system, tip to tail, allowed me to create all of my assets in under 2 minutes. Now, again, as I'm saying that, I want to make it really clear that doesn't mean that all of my content was just magically produced and done. No, I still have to go in and post the blog post. I still have to go in and send the email. I still have to go in and create this podcast and all of the things that you're seeing. So there is still very much an involved process. What it alleviates is the mental overwhelm of what do I say? How do I say it? And it gets me like 80% there. So I hope this was encouraging for you. And I hope that as you're hearing this, one, you're like, oh my gosh, I remember 2020. I don't want to go back. Like the money was insanely amazing, but the stress, the chaos, the overwhelm for a lot of people, even who had systems, it was still a lot. And that's how I feel like it is today with AI. The overwhelm, the noise, the intensity, the velocity at which it's happening is so much. However, just like systems then and in any massive disruption, systems are what will save your bacon. So, going back and landing the plane on today's episode, I want you to think about systems. Before you go and subscribe to the next shiny AI app and the next best promised solution, I want you to think, ask yourself this: do I have an AI strategy? What is my AI strategy? And from that's where you need to figure out, do I have a system? Okay, what is my foundation? What is my content strategy? And then how do I deploy that every single week? I say define your brand, design your strategy, then deploy your content. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, cool, that sounds great in theory, I still feel like I'm overwhelmed or lost, I got you. I'm going to be launching a 4-week cohort. So, what this looks like is I'm going to do 1 hour once a week for 4 weeks. I'm going to cap this at 10 people because I intentionally want to make sure that the group is small enough to answer questions and like collaboratively learn. But we're going to go through in 4 weeks. The first week, we're going to go through your AI tools. I'm primarily going to touch on Claude and a little bit of ChatGPT. I'm going to give you some best practices on how to set up projects, how to create project instructions, how to create skills that will help write your content for you. If you're in co-work, we can touch on co-work just a little bit. And we're going to just get your AI tools set up. The second week, we're going to go through your brand foundation. This is the part that I talk so much about on all my episodes and a lot of people miss or skip, but we're going to go through your story work. What is your story? Who are the audiences that you support? What does your voice and your tone sound like in your writing? How do you create a brand book? I have a custom tool that is going to help guide you through that process. And at the end of it, you're going to get a PDF version of your mini brand brief. Then the third week, we're going to go over building a custom content strategy. This is not a generic strategy that is going to just be copy and pasted for everybody in the cohort. Again, everything I do is AI powered. So you're going to get a custom GPT that is going to walk you through how to build out your own content strategy, and we'll build it live on the call together so you can see it in action. And then the fourth week is we're going to take that content strategy with your brand book and your account being optimized, and we're going to start practicing creating the content. So we're going to come up with one idea, then you're going to work through that idea and you're going to repurpose it into multiple pieces of content. The goal being that by the end of the 4 weeks, your account is going to be at least foundationally operational or better than where it is right now. You're going to have your mini brand brief, and then you're going to have a content strategy, and that tool you'll be able to repurpose again and again. And then you're going to be able to start learning how to go from idea to deploying the content. So I will link that in the show notes as well. If you want in on that or you want to learn more about that, click the show notes. It's going to take you to the website. You can learn more dates, details, all of the things. But thanks for listening. Hope this was helpful. As always, if you guys have questions, send me a DM. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can send me an email. I am widely findable online. But I hope this was helpful for you. And until then, I will see you next week on next week's episode.